Hi guys, it's Kelly here and I'm back with another video for Picket Studios, and today we are celebrating with a little happy birthday portion of this release. I am using the Blow Out Your Candles, one of my sets from them, which is Surprise It's Your Day, the fancy cake stand die, and I feel like I'm missing something out. No, I think that's all of them. So basically, this is a lazy girl's guide to a background that you don't have to mask. We are going to create two of the same background, and we're going to use them to show basically how you can create two different cards. One of them where the balloons are in the foreground and contribute to the focal point, and one where they're kind of pushed in the background and they're just an accent. So in order to very quickly make two of the same backgrounds, I'm using my Misty. I'm going to stamp them. I'm going to stamp one on the left, one on the right, and then kind of split my mask in the middle. As I said, Lazy Girl's Guide to I shouldn't say no masking, to minimal masking. And without moving the stamp, I am just putting in a new piece of cardstock lined up in exactly the same position. So here I use Eclipse masking tape, but you can use whatever your preferred masking tape is. I don't need the strings to be masked. I'm just going to do the heart portion of the balloons. You could also do this where you create your own, because there is a single balloon in this set, but I found it to be much easier to just stamp them all together. So here is that mask that I've trimmed out. I'm going to cut it in half because I didn't even want to cut two of them. And then I will mask the furthest right balloons on the left-hand side and the furthest left balloons on the right-hand side. And then I will stamp the balloons down again in the middle. This one is just shifted slightly down. And I felt like I'm panicking. I'm totally panicked because I forgot to put my magnet on there. But thankfully, it was kind to me and it did not pull my paper up. So I am going to go ahead and stamp this down, and I am stamping this in Picket Fence's Intense Black ink because I do intend to do some Copic coloring. So I can just remove those masks now, and then all of the balloons are stamped. The cake, so for the cake, I am just cutting it out in white cardstock because I am going to Copic color it as well. For the background, this is where I'm talking about the no masking. You could, if you wanted your colors to be true and bright, you could mask all of your balloons before you do your ink blending. You also could, to do no masking, color in your background with your alcohol markers. But I am not doing either. And instead, I'm going to show you how I made some color choices that I knew would work with the blue and the background, and it would still be okay. So for the background, I am using Tumbled Glass, Salty Ocean, and is it Prize Ribbon, guys? I think that's what it is. And I am, if it's not Prize Ribbon, it's Blueprint Sketch, but I'll see here in a minute when it comes on the screen. But then I like blue. Blue is a neutral for me. You guys know this. It isn't actually a neutral, but I use it as if it was a neutral. So I'm just doing a simple gradient, and it fades down to white at the bottom. This is just going to add some interest to the background, and it is Prize Ribbon. Good for me. I almost had it. I almost was confident. And then even though I am being light-handed, I am still going to do this twice because it makes the blending kind of seamless. And especially using the blending brushes really allow you to get that lighter blend that will fade into the white. You can totally skip this part if it's not your vibe. I think it just makes the background more interesting. So I'm using a little fan brush here to do some just water droplets in the background. I'm not working on watercolor paper, so I am trying to be conscientious and not put down too much water, because this cardstock isn't meant to handle that much water. And then I am using the Paper Splatters watercolor. I always mess up the name of this one. It is the white one, and it is White Snowflake. So I am going to add a little bit of water to this just to have it be easier, a little bit easier to flick. And I added a little too much water to begin with, which is why you saw me put in another drop of this. And this is just going to add some shimmer to the background. If you want all of your shimmers to stay true to this white color, you could maybe do that part second. But since it doesn't matter to me, I'm going to Copic color right over top of them and not worry about it. For this little cake slice, it's a 2-layer die, or you could use the pieces that cut out of the middle to add even more layers. But I'm just going to use this one, and I'm going to do a white cake with some chocolate frosting. And you can see I'm just I mean, it's not perfect, guys. I'm being really lackadaisical with where I'm tracing my shadows. Because just as long as they're somewhat in the same area, it'll be fine. So I'm using a warm gray for this, a W3 and a W1, and I'm adding more shading to the left-hand side where the frosting will be sitting on top. And then for the frosting, I chose to do chocolate, which is funny because in real life, I'm either chocolate and chocolate or vanilla and vanilla. I'm never vanilla with chocolate frosting. Or worse, chocolate cake with vanilla frosting. Like frosting those with all the little crummy parts is a nightmare, but that's neither here nor there. So this is, again, just super simple kind of shading. I'm adding some of the dark to the outside edges on the left-hand side and kind of across the bottom, and then blending that out with my mid-tone, and then finally the lightest color. And you'll see when the whole card gets together, it will give the appearance of as if there is kind of a light source on the right-hand side. This die does have the little sprinkles that are already cut out. I chose to treat them kind of like they were chocolate chips and just cover the top part of my die with that dark brown. So when you look through there, you see that dark brown and they look maybe like chocolate sprinkles or like chocolate chips on top. Whatever kind of floats your boat. So let's talk about this color selection. So I put blue in the background. Now, I know that I can use any of the primary colors to make my balloons colored, because primary colors are what create all of the other colors. So your primary colors are red, yellow, and blue. Don't mind this. I totally had to re-ink my R35. Red, yellow, and blue are your primary colors. So my background is blue. I can add red to it and it would create orange. I can add yellow to it and it would create green. So I did go a little bit darker with my colors that I chose, because that would give me the best chance of them being true to their colors despite the blue in the background. So obviously you can see my red is a little bit dark. The yellow is the one that I was probably the most nervous about, because the darker shading colors that I chose for my balloon are a bit on the orange side, and orange is blue's complement, so I was a little bit worried that they were going to look brown. But once I went in with the Y08 and went over everything, it doesn't. It looks yellow. So now, once the primary colors, okay, so we know we can put the primary colors down, and that's going to work. Then you can go to the colors that are on to the left and right, the analogous colors to the left and right of my main color. So my main color is blue. To the left of that is going to be green. To the right of that is going to be purple. And so I know I can use both of those colors and they will work well with the blue also. I could have swapped the red for pink. That would have been fine. The only one you really want to stay away from is the complementary color to whatever background color you have. So let's say our background color is purple. Don't put yellow balloons in it. Yellow is purple's complement. Same thing with like a red and green. If you have a green background, don't do red balloons. But the ones that are analogous will work right over top of them without even having to do any masking. Now, would these colors be brighter if I didn't have a blue background? Yes, they totally would be. They would be much brighter and truer to their actual color, but I'm not worried about it. So for this one, I am going to trim about 1/8 of an inch off of each side. Not each side, each to the left and the right-hand side. And then I'm going to cut this happy right out of the middle. The birthday I'm going to cut out of this glitter cardstock. The reason why I chose to trim it down on the left and right-hand side is because the happy is a very large die and it almost goes edge to edge, and it gives the card a wide appearance, where in order to help it kind of look more portrait, by trimming off the edges, it shrinks down that look of wideness. So for the other card, the one where we're kind of going to push the balloons into the background, I am using the Blow the Candles Out. This is part of the new release. These look like your traditional kind of outlined number candles. I buy them for all my kids' birthdays. So you could stamp them in whatever color worked for you, but I thought it would be fun to stamp them in a white pigment ink and then heat emboss them on silver so I could kind of bring in a little bit of a metallic. And I really like the way that it came out. Before I tried silver, I tried gold as well. And the gold looked nice too. So I think that that's just like a fun little way to kind of make them a little fancier. I'm also going to cut out the bottom of this cake stand. So I'm cutting the whole thing because my original intention was to use the top of it. I actually didn't end up using that. I ended up using the bottom of the stand to kind of make a plate. But moving right along to putting the cards together. So remember, this is the one that we trimmed down the left and right hand side. So I will have black underneath where the happy is. When you die cut your happy out of it, you want to make sure that you keep all of the pieces, the inside pieces, because that's how you're going to fit it back in so that the words still spell what you want. So I've used some Picket Fence foam tape. Their foam tape is made to be thicker, so you could very easily turn this into a shaker if you just wanted to put some acetate on the backside of it before you added your foam tape. Then you could add little shaker bits in there. I decided not to do that. I have another card coming up that will have some shaker bits, and so I decided not to do that for this one. I am also the inside portion of the A and the two P's. I'm going to pop those up on foam as well. This just adds some more interest because there's nothing else going on in this card. It's just these balloons and this sentiment. So in order to make it more interesting, we're doing that bit of kind of negative die cutting. We're popping this up to add interest. We're adding the glitter on the birthday cardstock, and then of course I'm going to add some rhinestones. I have nothing against the other card. I think the other card is cute as well, but I think I prefer this one just because I'm more of a clean and simple kind of card maker. Like that's what I prefer. But I did really want to show kind of like the versatility of a larger die like this. Where you can have two cards with the same elements and one is kind of pushed to the background, one's kind of pushed to the foreground, and you get two different looks. So for this one, part of how we're going to push it to the background is we're going to add vellum. So we're going to add vellum right over top. You can still see the balloons, you can still see the colors, but it's not so in your face, which allows this cake and the candles to become the focal point. So this is so funny. I use a lot of birthday cards, and they're pretty much the only ones I use in real life. So I was trying to think like who's the next birthday that comes up, and it's actually my sister-in-law's birthday that is the next one that comes up, and I knew it was in July, but I did not know how old she was going to be turning. So when I originally stamped the numbers, I stamped the 2, the 3, the 4, and the 5. I'm like, surely this girl is not older than 25. And then I sent my mother-in-law a text. Like, I stamped the other ones while I was waiting. I had sent her a text to be like, hey, how old is Mallory going to be on her next birthday? And then she came back with 27. And I thought she was like 23. So you look good for your age, Mal. Like, girl, well, you're still in your 20s. We all looked great in our 20s, but nonetheless. So originally, like I said, I was going to use the cake stand, the top portion of it, but I ended up trimming off the bottom and actually flipping it upside down to create like a little metallic plate that I could put my cake slice on. So vellum is a little bit tricky to adhere. So I'm going to put my balloons down first onto my card base, and this also has a black outline. And then for this one, instead of the birthday being cut in the glitter cardstock, the happy is cut in the glitter cardstock. And then I have this little cake with these little balloons. I wanted to show you here what it would look like if you didn't have the vellum. And it's not bad. I don't mean to indicate that it's bad, but it is competing. The background is competing for attention with the items that are in the foreground, with the sentiment. So using the vellum to kind of push it to the back is a great way to kind of diffuse that color. It still is festive. It still has the balloons. You can still see them. It's just not as in your face. Alternatively, I could have left the balloons uncolored. I could have just left them blue, or I could have just colored them with the blue marker. So it would have been more monochromatic, and that would have pushed them into the back as well. But so here I am putting my cake onto my little plate, onto this little black piece, which is just acting as like a grounding piece. And then I'm going to get my vellum in the place that I want it. And then I'm going to add a little line of glue underneath where I know my cake and that little grounding piece are going to be, to hold it in place while I adhere the happy portion. This is just going to hold it in place, because with vellum, I have not found, maybe you guys have, but I have not found yet a single adhesive that you can't see through to see the vellum. So in the top left-hand corner, we have our focal point kind of in the bottom right. In the top left-hand corner, we're going to put this sentiment, and I am putting them just a smidge closer together than they are for the die. And that's because each layer, like I have an A2 size card, and then I cut down the next piece to 4 by 5 1/4, and then I cut my vellum piece to be 3 3/4 by 5. So they each get a little bit smaller. So now that I have this happy in place, I can add the adhesive behind the letters and know that my vellum's going to be super secure, but you're not going to be able to see the adhesive. So once I have that down, I die cut the birthday in white to tie in the letters and the cake, and also help it to be more legible where that happy is, because this is more of like a fine script font, which I think is beautiful, but this is just going to help make it so it's easier to read. And I'm sure it's probably hard to tell on camera because I know what it says, and it's a little bit harder for me to tell, but in real life it is not. You can read it very easily. So once I get that down and glued down flat, I am going to add some foam tape behind this little piece, this little focal point we've created, the numbers, the cake, and that little grounding piece. I'm just going to put some foam tape underneath that and kind of pop them up. And again, this is just going to add a little bit more interest to what we already have going on. And then the piece that hangs off, I will be able to just flip the card front over and just trim that off. I use the Spellbinders detail scissors because they are non-stick. So now that we have the cards done, it's time to add some gems. I used a combination of, let me think, Starry Skies and Sound Waves. They're both like really great kind of color changing iridescent style gems. So I used a combination of those two to just kind of fill in some of those areas and add a little bit more sparkle. And then as the last thing, I'm not doing it on the card on the left. That has enough shine with the metallic cardstock. But over here, I am adding some shimmer directly to the hearts. And then I'm going in with a white gel pen and adding some highlights as well. Because there's nothing else, there is no other focal point in this card. So I hope that gives you guys some ideas for different cards that you can make with with the same supplies or with the same background, and kind of stretch what you have. These larger dies are really great for that, and everybody needs a happy birthday. I mean, let's be honest. So thank you so much for joining me. I always appreciate your time, and I will catch you on the next video. Bye.